Wait, are we good?
We are good.
Relentless.
I hate not having headphones because usually I would hear the intro.
Oh, I got you.
There's people in the world that are starving. You could
Don't play with me.
First world problems.
People are dying.
Kim, stop taking selfies. Your sister's going to jail. Okay. Anyways, everyone, we have so much to
People
celebrate.
are dying.
Literally. Welcome to episode. Are we at 20, season 3?
I think we're at 20.
I think this is 20 of season 3, but this is episode 50 of the Relentless Diaries. So we're celebrating episode 50. We're celebrating 1 million likes on TikTok, guys. We hit 1 million likes on TikTok, and we're celebrating our beautiful guests here on the CBC Gem show, Virgins. I'm so excited to have you guys here because everyone knows me. I'm like a big TV head. I love TV. I love good TV, and your show is good TV. So before we get started, please introduce yourself so everyone knows who you guys are. Big up yourself, what you do for the show, everything, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, my name is Aden, and I am the creator, writer, and producer of Virgins.
So the brains behind the creativity.
That's my baby.
That's your baby. I love
Yes.
that. Yes, awesome.
My name is Hosaena, and I play Abby on Virgins.
My name is Lu, and I directed 3 of the episodes.
Which 3 did you direct?
6, 7, and 8. So I got like a
You
continuous
got a run.
storyline going.
You got a solid run. And you guys are been here all the time. You guys introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Trezor, and I'm the president of the Faithful Black Man Association and part-time host on the Relentless Diaries.
Not part-time. When did you become part-time host? You're a full-time host.
I meant co-host, not part-time.
Oh, okay.
Co.
I'm Clyde Smith. I'm the director, producer, editor, writer, and co-host for Relentless Diaries.
Writer.
Writer.
Yeah.
What do you write?
What do you write? Yeah, what are you?
This is
what
a
are you
scripted
writing?
show.
I write
You
the
heard
co-
Aden. You're like, I'm gonna throw writer. I'm gonna throw writer in there.
Yeah, it sounded
Manifesting.
good to say.
Don't
So
do
that
anything.
adds a little, you know?
Manifesting.
Look at him trying to compete with
I don't know.
Aiden.
If
Yeah, like, what is
I
that?
don't know if our podcast has a writer. Yeah. All
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Season
don't.
6, y'all have a writer now.
We do.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Apparently. Anyways, so getting into your show, Virgins. So I didn't watch the last episode because I have a really bad habit of spoiling things, and I wanted to keep this episode very get into it but not ruin it for people who are listening because I know people are gonna go and watch this. So I didn't watch the last episode. You can talk if you want to talk about it. Feel free, but I don't want to be the person who spoils it.
The very last.
I haven't watched the very last episode because I know I have a thing where I'm gonna spoil it. If I watch the last episode, that'll be the first thing that comes to my mind, and I don't want to ruin that for y'all. So my biggest thing is the East African culture that you guys depict in the show. I think is amazing. One thing I've always said, living in Toronto, I've had a lot of East African friends, and for some way, the East African culture is so close knit in Toronto that everyone knows each other. I will meet one friend in university, and then one friend at work, and then one friend through a friend, and then one friend through a cousin, and somehow they're all connected. They all know each other. So how does that mean to you in depicting that in the show?
I mean, that's kind of like part of our trauma growing up in the city.
Trauma? Really? You would consider that trauma?
I mean, you can't go anywhere without someone you know seeing you and being able to tell somebody else who tells their mom, who tells their aunt, who somehow it gets back to their dad. It's just you
There's
have to be
always someone's
careful.
uncle sitting in a taxi cab outside the club. So that's trauma.
Yeah.
Walk down the mall with your boyfriend.
Because there is a scene in the show, which I won't spoil, because I'm working on my spoiler. There's a scene in the show where it's damn, how did that girl catch that? To where someone's trying to do something on the low, and Shorty's just in the back, ooh, caught you. But I'm yeah, the East African community in Toronto is so close knit. But you described it. I think it's beautiful, but you guys describe it as trauma.
There's good and bad at every time. But yeah, that's definitely. Everyone is looking out for you.
Right.
See, me personally, that's why I think regarding that scene, that is exactly why I use self-checkout. So you don't really get into those type of situations. Going to the register takes too long, and you can't really be on the low and
You bump into a lot of people that you know at the register.
No, because I use self-checkout.
But
Prior to using self-checkout, you were running into a lot of people you knew at the
Not
cash.
really. I think prior to using self-checkout, I wasn't really old enough to partake in those activities. I feel like self-checkout's not that new.
Next question, how old are you?
yes and no. Self-checkout is fairly new. 'Cause I remember being like maybe like a kid or like early teens
No,
and
it's
like
very new.
Yeah, like
Very
self
new. I
checkout
feel
was
like last like
To me, it's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
like you
insane.
trust me to scan everything.
Yeah,
in
I
this
said,
car?
how could you tempt me?
Especially when the dollar store has self checkout, you're like, really?
That's crazy. No, that's
Like,
crazy.
And
really?
there's
They're
no
moving
way that
crazy.
any of us would ever steal from any of these
No.
stores.
Yeah, we never.
But in
By
a
the way.
world where that happens, I
Yeah.
feel like these places, like you have to know,
Why
right?
give the temptation out, you know?
Right.
Why?
Why-
Speaking of temptation, Virgins is
Yeah.
a very tempting show to watch. No, I'm joking. But there is a lot of kind of like
solid segue, I think.
sexy moments in the show, and just like you said, not trying to give away like any any spoilers, but as beautiful as the community can be, that we're so close knit and we're so supportive of each other, it makes it hard to make mistakes and to you know, fall in love and to date and to like break up with someone and then date someone new. There's just we are experiencing all the same temptations as any other young person or any human being who just wants to explore themselves and their lives and their identity. But we're doing it with what feels like the entire community watching us. And so there ends up being so much secrecy. And so how do you get to really fulfill your self-actualization when
you feel like you're being watched.
you feel like you're being watched? Yeah.
Right. And I would say you also did an amazing job like balancing like culture and also like the modern life of a Toronto young woman in the 20-something. How was finding that balance and representing it? Was that hard for you to find the balance of how important culture is in like the East African community, but also trying to be like this modern, like free, like woman, and how that kind of interacts?
Writing, it wasn't hard because it just is what my world looks like and what our upbringing looks like. It just felt very, you know, some feedback that we got from viewers was, is this a documentary about me?
Right.
You know, it just feels very autobiographical, but it's not about me in particular, anybody. But it's so relatable. This is just what it feels like. And I think in experiencing it, it's hard in the moment when you're in your early 20s and you're trying to navigate, like, you live in this world that is like super conservative and but at the same time you live in Toronto and you're part of this society as well, and so it feels like you're wearing two hats and you're like, which one are you? Are you both? Are you one? Are you all three? Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to be both and all three? Or do you have to eventually pick a side? Because there's some characters where she thinks she's doing the right thing, right? And then things don't go her way and she does everything right. So can you balance being all three or both or having it?
I mean, I think the way that character goes about it is probably not the best way to do it. But yeah, I definitely think that it's possible to be all three and kind of forge your own path in the world. And I think that's honestly what the series, a lot of it is about, is like these four young women trying to figure out how they can be all parts of themselves. Right? Yeah? Yeah.
We're not just one thing, though. It's just human beings. Like, we're never, like, fixated on one part of ourselves. There's so many different things about us. And I think that our experience is the same thing that I think most POC people, or specifically Black people, go through, is just a lot of pressure to just never make a mistake. No grace, like, just kind of always having to, like, walk this tightrope of making sure you're doing everything right and making your family proud. And it's never really about you. It's about everybody that you're bringing with you.
Right.
Whether you fail or you succeed, when it shouldn't be that. It should just be your life. And like, one day things are gonna go great, and the next day things are gonna go bad, and it shouldn't reflect your entire journey. But it's hard, you know, for all of us. But I think that when you see a story that is a story you haven't seen before, I think most stories are just human experiences, and it's just a nuanced version of a human experience. So when you see that, like, now when East African people get to see this show, they're going to see themselves for the first time.
Right.
And they're going to be able to be like, oh shit, like, I did that before. Like, I'm not the only one that, like, embarrassed my mom and did this, and I had a boyfriend. You know what I mean? These things are so small, but you make them so big, right? And also the people that aren't us will just get another story that they can relate to, because we have, as humans, I think, a lot more similarities than we have differences. We just fixate on those differences too much.
Right.
So
And kind of what was the like thought process about making it around like air quotations virgins. You know what I'm saying? Because when people like are because like I mean don't want to give it away, but you know, air quotes. It's a steamy show. You know, it gets a little exciting. But yeah, what was kind of like the thought process behind like kind of centering around like virgins and some women like not being sexually active, but they're also kind of like everyone was beautiful. Like they had that hot girl mentality. They're very open, but they're also virgin. So how was that finding like kind of breaking that barrier? People think virgin, they think like, oh, like she's so weird, like oh my god, she's a virgin, like she's not cool. So how was it like
there's a label in box that you get put in as like after a certain age when you say that you're a virgin, and I feel like that show explores that side of what it's actually like, so
yeah. Well, I thought
that word just means a lot to people.
Right, it does.
It means a lot to people.
Right, it does.
Yeah. So this show was inspired by myself and my friends in a particular time in our lives. And it was, for us, it felt so normal that we were virgins. It was like, of course we're virgins. We're not gonna have sex. Like, that's so silly. That's so dumb. Like, why would we do that?
That's so silly. Like,
Sex.
silly.
Ew,
would
having
engage in
sex,
that?
That's gross.
Yeah. Exactly. It was so, for us, we looked at everyone else as strange for looking at us as strange. But we understood the world context that we were in, living in Toronto and being part of a big city in the Western culture. And so it ended up being something that, when you're with people of your own community who are of similar minds, that it's something that is lauded. And then, at the same time, when you're with your homies, it's something that is shamed. And
very true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I don't think it needs to be lauded. And I also don't think it needs to be shamed. And so it was something that you just didn't want to talk about, and it was another secret. East Africans have a lot of secrets. Their whole life is a secret.
When do the secrets come out? Do they ever come out?
They never come out.
They never come out.
No, you take them to the grave.
I mean, the ones that do, it becomes a scandal.
You'll never see them again.
Yeah.
They'll go back to the home country.
There's a whole social exile from like your community. People, it's just like you don't want to be the one that people talk about.
I think that not even just like, I think that the immigrant parent experience is like the way that you're disciplined is by shaming you.
Yes.
Like you get shamed as opposed to being, taught like, oh, this is probably why you shouldn't have done it and this is why we got here. Instead it's like, nobody ever does this. You're the only one that's ever done this. You carry that weight. So you feel like blasphemous for the mistakes that you make as just like a regular kid or like a human being. Right. And I think that's what we have to stop doing to our children.
Yeah, I think the overarching theme that you guys portrayed about doing the right thing the right way and the pressures of that coming from immigrant families is something that like no matter what culture, I think that's just like an immigrant thing in general. Do you guys think our generation is going to be the end of that, or do you think some people are still going to carry that on?
I think the minority will. I think the majority is understanding I did not like this and I'm like working through the kinks of my own life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that most people are like expanding their minds and accepting that there are other ways to like exist in the world. But I think there's always going to be people who take the old mindset with them into the next generation. And there'll be people in the next generation who also have that same old mindset. I don't think necessarily there's a way to escape it, but I think like shows like Virgins and other shows that show that immigrant experience do help to like change people's mindsets.
Something I wanted to ask about is just I feel like being a black person of color in Toronto where we're at is almost inherently like what your show is about, the child of immigrant parents, and us being, here in Toronto, that's like, if you're a black person from Toronto, you're the child of an immigrant,
Most likely.
Most likely.
Black Scotians.
Yeah. There's, weird. But like, because I'm not East African, so like a lot of the things that like, I'll see Toronto represented like in mainstream media and stuff, and it's like, you're like Leonardo DiCaprio in that meme, like, oh, like there's us,
Yeah.
And this show is so Toronto, like there's so many elements of the city. we had another show, Next Stop, where we interviewed and that show was so Toronto, you know? It was almost as if you weren't from Toronto, you wouldn't be able to understand it. And I want to, applaud the way that you guys almost sprinkled Toronto in. It wasn't like overwhelming, and it wasn't like, it was still something that someone could watch and, like, oh, what's that word mean? And understand it. What was your guys' approach to that? Was there, because I know there's also a lot of this discourse about using Toronto slang and the accent and for content creators and stuff as well. So like, were you guys kind of like, let's really, implement that, or what was the approach?
I wanted it to be as Toronto as possible. I wanted Toronto to be like a character, its own character in the show. And because I think that the way the East African community takes up space in the city is quite unique, and I'm really proud of it. And I wanted to show that we're here and that we kind of have like a mark. We've made like a mark in some way, even though it seems very silent, like no one's ever heard about us or heard from us, rather. I was really proud to have something from Toronto in that kind of way. The only reason it looks sprinkled versus like more prominent is because we didn't have time to shoot more. If I could have, it would have been like absolutely. I wanted it to be clear that this was a Toronto show, that we were in this city, because I think it's whack that like so much things get shot here, but we don't get the representation of how cool the city is. I'm really proud of what a diverse metropolis this place is, and I always take it for granted until I leave and I'm in other cities around the world, and you just realize, well, other like white majority cities, and it's just so disappointing. I'm just like, oh, everyone looks like one type of cookie cutter formation. And I love that here I get to see women in saris, and then on Sundays I see Ethiopian women and Eritrean women in like traditional kameez going on the subway to go to church, and it's just so vibrant. The cultural representation here is so vibrant, and I wanted to showcase that.
I think you did a great job of that.
So speaking of not having enough time to shoot more stuff, so from inception to filming to it coming out, how long was that process?
No, that laugh was crazy. She said, oh, you really want to know?
Wait, I don't even.
Yeah, from inception. Inception was summer 2016.
It's been a while.
Whoa.
It's
Yeah.
been a
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been like a work in progress.
Yeah, it's been 6 years.
Was it because there was obstacles, or was it kind of just like, I want to perfect it, it's going to take time?
And when are there not obstacles?
That's very true. But we also face a lot more, right?
Exactly.
Like, way more. So how would you kind of describe the last 6 years and really getting this out there and having the world see it now?
Yeah. Oddly enough, I wouldn't say obstacles. I really believe that everything happened in the time that it was meant to. When I had the idea, I had no background in filming, in the film world. I had no business writing. I didn't know anything about this industry. But I knew Issa Rae. And I knew Awkward Black Girl. And I was like, okay, if she can do it, I can do this. I can figure this out. And I really applaud her because she really was the blueprint to make me believe that it would be possible. So yeah, I started writing, but I didn't know what I was doing. And it took all of this time for me to develop the skill set to be able to be not just the creator, but the writer and the producer to execute what you guys saw on your screens.
And how important was character development and having each character be so unique, but also represent a part of the East African culture? Because not just saying it because you're here, Abby was my favorite character. I will say that. I loved everyone, but I definitely was I really like her and her story. And
Did you guys hear that?
I really liked her story and her character development. So yeah, of course, but even for you, how was it? Is that very close to how you are in real life? Or is it I had to completely 180 myself? Who was this girl? Why am I portraying her?
Abby and me are completely different in the way that we just tackle everything.
Even Abby's voice is higher pitched
than
Hosaena's voice.
Yes.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. I wanted to play a character that was farther from who I was. I feel like I can relate to Delina more.
Okay.
And just in life, just Delina's relationship with her mother. I'm like, oh, I'm also sweating because I'm trying not to give anything away. I'm like, Delina's relationship with her mother.
Yeah.
And just like her journey. But Abby is what I feel like I was even talking about before, about walking that like tightrope of always trying to be like perfect and I feel like as we go along with the journey of virgins, we're gonna understand a lot more of why she's like that. But I feel like she reminds me of so many people that I know of, like just wanting to do well, but it's like, but what is the reason? Like, is it for yourself? Is it for some other validation? She's a lot more analytical than I am, but she's more of like, I want to be the first, like I want to be the one that's tallest in the room, and I'm the one that's like, wherever the brick wall is, just like put me right behind it. So it's like, it's nice to have somebody kind of bring that part out of you, and you learn a lot more about yourself and the things that you don't really see in yourself. So that was a nice part. Yeah.
Did you guys have acting experience before the show, or was this like your guys' for like coming out party?
I've acted since I was a kid, like on and off. Like I did a lot of theater, done a lot of improv. But I started professionally pursuing it about like 4 years ago. I think this is my second project that like is like a project. So I would like to say I'm like fairly new, but it's not a new thing for me. Like something I've done for a really long time.
And how did casting go? Because even like the men on this show, I feel like in Ash,
What
I was
about
like,
the men?
ugh. Not him, his character. I was so like, he is fake, girl. Like, Sarah, please, like, no, leave him. Sorry, but like,
So
no.
well casted.
And I, like I said, his character is actor. If that's not how he is in real life, he's a great actor. Because I was so annoyed with him. I'm like, get him out of here.
Lovely
this is a
guy,
sign.
lovely guy.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
very sweet
But
guy.
yeah, his character, I was like, ew. So yeah, and even with like, Marcel. So I know Marcel in real life. Yeah, I know Marcel.
I love Marcel.
So when I saw him, I was
Not
like,
from Toronto.
I was like,
love
this was
Marcel.
the perfect character for you.
No.
How did you get him involved in like all the men? Like, so I said, all right, how did that work? Because they did very well.
Yeah. So we had a casting director, and they managed that. So they brought us a bunch of people, and I would play their self tapes.
Right.
Yeah, we just kind of went through the formal process. It was nice being able to afford someone
Absolutely.
to do it the right way. Because in the past, it was very like grassroots and like WhatsApp groups and Instagram. But yeah, shout out to Brunch Store Casting.
But you
all
also
those men.
You also did some calling out to people, right? Like you invited Nasra to audition, right? Didn't you?
Yeah, and I also told Hosaena to audition too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did.
You got I was gonna say you got the inside scoop.
Me and Aden have known each other for a very long time.
Nice.
We grew up in the same church. Families are very close. It's like an older sister. So she's always kind of looked out for me and always like vetted me and tried to push me in this direction. So yeah, I was very lucky.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't give anybody any favors. I think it's really important that you earn anything that you get in life, especially when you have like friends or family in the business or in wherever it is that you're working at. Because I feel like I've experienced this in other ways, but I feel like sometimes when you give people an opportunity as opposed to someone earning the opportunity, they take it for granted. And for me, I wanted as much as possible. One, I think everybody should just earn their opportunity. Two, you would know that like, okay, this matters a lot to me and I want to do a great job with it. But also even for like her own story, to be able to say that this didn't come from favoritism. And so when I'm casting, I'm not the only person who makes that decision. CBC has to make that decision. My producing partner has to make the decision. And I mean, with Hosaena, it was unanimous.
Right.
Yeah.
You shut down the room.
Period. Yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah.
I feel like I know the answer to this, but if you guys were to do the same show over again, but like from a male perspective, do you think you would be able to have the same stories, or the stories that happen in the show are very specific to women that are
Reversal
from
man strikes you.
question.
Tresor's reversal man.
reversal man.
Okay. Anything you bring up about women, he's like, so if it was about men.
No, I'm saying
I was like,
this is an amazing.
Don't do that. It wasn't good.
it was a good question.
better if it was
He
with
sprinkled
men.
reversal man with like elegance.
Yeah, it was elegant reversal.
Elegant reversal
I think
man.
the stories would be
Relevant.
able to be pulled off the
So
same, or the
wow.
stories are very specific to you guys being daughters of immigrant parents.
So in the sense of them being male virgins, or just like a
Just
male
like the situations
version.
that happen
Male
in the
virgins
show.
exist. No, I'm
The
kidding.
male version of the show. Do you think you could have the same stories, or it's more specific because of the experience you guys have had being daughters of immigrant parents?
Okay, so I mean, I'm sure that there are a lot of really interesting, nuanced stories from the male perspective. I just don't know them.
Drop a bomb. I don't have my headphones on. Thank you.
It's gonna go.
Yeah, I genuinely don't, and I'm a woman, East African woman, who was a virgin for a really long time. So I wrote what I knew, and I would be curious. I'd love to see it. So if any creators out there, I'd love to watch your show.
Season 2, the male perspective.
No.
Not Miss
hire
King.
a
Absolutely not. I'm keeping my character.
I will not be back for the second season if that's the
But yeah,
case.
so you as a writer, do you think people writing a story that they don't know about themselves, you think someone can properly depict that, or you think it should be something more closer to your heart?
So I'll answer this. Also, Lou's also a writer, so I think she'll have a lot of great things to add to that. But I think that we're artists first. And so being an artist, we're always just living in our imagination and creating all the time. So I definitely think it's possible that you can write stories and characters that are not of your lived experience. All like adding to that, we also live in a society where there is inequity and injustice, and there are people who just don't always have access or the opportunity to be able to represent themselves in the most accurate way. And so with that in mind, we need to care about how certain people are represented and make sure that we're hearing from them when we're writing about them and representing them. And so even just in the show, like in our writer's room, we made sure to have as many identities that were represented in the lead cast in our writer's room. And that included having like a man in the writer's room, which at first I was like, do we have to? But, but my, I joke about it. And, our male writing consultant, Lu Mangasha, is a comedian. He was really great. But one thing that he was able to highlight for me is like, Aden, these male characters don't really have a backstory. They don't have like an identity. Yeah. And they're kind of just like props. And I realized, I don't like, my brain doesn't have as much care about building the male character as much as I had for building the female character. And so in having a guy in the writer's room, he was able to show me what my blind spot was and where my weaknesses were so that I could put more effort into it and build more well-rounded male characters who I am like really proud of now. Yeah, but I'll pass.
I think it's just dependent on what the story is about. I think that anybody can write any character of any identity if the story is not dependent on that identity, if that makes sense. I think that it's a lot easier to write a story that is about being queer when you're queer. It's easier to write a story about being an East African virgin when you have experienced being an East African virgin. And I don't know that necessarily you can consult your way out like into that understanding. But I also at the same time, like, for using the male characters and virgins as an example, the story's not about them. So it's like you can use you can utilize like a consultant who has a male perspective to be able to like get to that place and write those characters authentically, because the story's not about their experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I also think, like, we know, obviously, like, being or children of immigrants, there's a lot of, like, parallels. Because, like, I'm Jamaican. Tresor's half Jamaican, half Congolese. Clyde's half Trinidadian, half white. No, I'm kidding. I should have mentioned that. Yeah, literally. So yeah, we all are products of immigrants, but I definitely, me being like Jamaican, I saw a lot of parallels, even though it's definitely based around, you know, East African culture. I saw so many parallels, like, you know, your mom blessing you before you leave the house, or like the expectations of, you want to be an actress, you want to be a creative, actually you need to be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer, you need to make
Act like a lawyer.
Yeah, you need to make 300K. I know, I literally, like, I wanted to be a lawyer, not really wanted to be a lawyer, but like I wanted to be a lawyer in university.
Wanted to make your family proud.
Yeah, and then when I got like actually studying law, I'm like, this is not for me. And my mom saw me like, you know, piercing my ears more. Like, she's like, didn't you want to be a lawyer? And I'm like, maybe this is time to tell you no. Actually, no. Yeah, so like seeing that, that was really good parallel for me. And I think people, but like whatever culture you're from, you can definitely see a lot of parallels in that. And I really appreciated that, being able to connect and also learn. So I think you guys did a really, really good job of like portraying that throughout the show.
Like,
Thanks, man.
even as a
Thank
creative
you.
myself, you know, like I used to make music and stuff. It's like all too common that just everyone that you work with in sort of a creative field is, if they're, you know, a child of an immigrant, that they're like almost doing it in secrecy away from their family, you know? So it's definitely something that we all have in common that you guys portrayed in a great way.
That's really sweet. Thank you.
And I think we come from a generation of unpacking. That's like the biggest word with like the stars, unpacking. We unpack everything. We unpack our trauma. We unpack our childhood. We unpack everything. So, like Tresor mentioned earlier, like, do you think that our generation will continue it? I feel like if you are child of an immigrant, I feel like it kind of stops here. But if you're maybe like still in like the motherland, like Jamaica or like Ethiopia or anywhere, those might continue. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like once you kind of hit, like, you're still very like close to home, even though you're in North America. But I feel like once you're in North America, you kind of see like social media now is so huge. Talking to others is so huge. We have that like theme of unpacking our trauma. Like, I don't want my kids to feel, you know, scared to tell me about sex or talk about sex or anything like that. So I think our generation is doing a good job of like learning from other cultures and seeing, oh, we all have very similar trauma. Okay, I'm gonna unpack that because I don't want my kids to go through what I went through. Yeah.
I think that's where it comes from. You're just like, I don't ever want somebody I love that's so small to have to navigate alone. It just feels lonely. Like, you just feel like you can't talk to the people that you wish you could talk to.
Right.
You know?
At the same time, you know, I realized in talking to other East African women about their experiences having like the sex talk with their mom. And I was surprised, like some parents were like super progressive. Some were encouraging them to like, you know, have sex, feel free, you know, learn what you need to learn and don't feel judgment about it. And I was so shocked that I became the auntie. I was like, oh my God, you know, like, really? But I think, so to answer your question, I think that people just parent from a place of however much healing they've been able to do.
That's very true.
And it's like unpacking and healing and self-reflection and all these things are not things that are like taught back home. And a lot of people don't want to go to therapy when they get here. So there's just like such a ways to go in like healing, and our parents healing themselves to be able to better parent from a place of being healed, you know? And so
when you bring up like healing to like a Black parent, they're like, heal what?
They're like, what are you talking about?
Food, you have a house, heal what?
What do I have to heal? Do you know what I went through?
You know what? When you're like, oh, I'm tired, they're like, why are you
Tired from what?
What did
You know
do?
what I've been through to be tired,
Literally.
but it's like, but that's what you need to heal from.
Yeah.
So
But
Exactly.
what I was gonna ask was, did you guys have the sex talk with your parents? Anybody in this room? Did you have a?
I'll let y'all go first to answer that
Because when she was like
question.
sex talk, I said,
literally,
Not really. I think when they tried, it was too late. You know? I think by the time that they were like, so you want to talk? And I'm like, about what?
I've been
Like,
thoughting and bopping for the past 3 years, Mom.
No, but it was like by the time I was like 18, 17. So it was like, you should have
Done this
missed the
long
boat.
time.
You know,
Right, right.
On this. So
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't really have one. I don't think so, no.
Me personally, I never had the sex talk. Like, I grew up with a single parent household, so my mom never really had that talk with me. And I remember once when I was probably like 18 or 19, I was in the car with my mom and my uncle, and randomly out of nowhere, my uncle's like, yo, I hope you don't think that he's still a virgin. And I was in the back like, oh, what? And my mom's like, no, he would never, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so I think eventually I brought it to my mom. I was like, yo, just to let you know, I'm not a virgin. And I thought that she was going to tweak out way more than she did, but she was just like, oh, do you use protection? I was like, yeah. She's like, how old were you? I was like, 17. She's like, okay. And she never brought it up again, ever in my life. The most confusing conversation I've ever had.
Yeah, I've never had this sex talk with my mom. I think like she just saw like certain hints that, okay, my daughter's sexually active. And I remember because like I wanted to go on birth control, but I was using as I do have really bad cramps. I was like, oh, like I have really bad cramps and like I have like one pimple and I want to get rid of it, so I should go on birth control. And she like looked at me and she was like, big woman decisions have big woman consequences. And that's all that she said. And I was like, okay. But I did have this sex talk with my aunt. Because I think I mentioned this before, probably previous episodes. My aunt had her son fairly young. She had him at 19. So it was funny. We were in like Sherway Gardens, and I had my birth control with me. And like back then, I was like, I have to get 11 o'clock every day, or I'm gonna get pregnant. So I like tried to like take one like on the side, and she was like, "What's that?" And I was like,
"Pills." Like a Tic Tac.
Yeah, and she was like, "Sit down." And like she had like the sex talk, like, okay, like who is he? You know, are you using protection? Like, you know, don't let no man drive you crazy. You know what I'm saying? Don't get pregnant. So she really had that talk with me, even though my mom didn't. And my mom's a single mom too, and just me and my sister. So, but I mean, I'm glad. I think my mom was nervous too, but I'm glad my aunt kind of stepped in, because my mom like got married, had like she did everything like air quotations by the book, like got married at 28, had me at 30, had my sister at 32. My aunt was more like, you know, had her son at 19, then had her daughter like 2 years later, and then she got married and all that stuff. So it's different perspectives, right? And she was able to relate, like, okay, you're sexually active, a little bit younger, but here's my experience and here's what I want to teach you. But I'm glad that even if your mom can't do it, I'm glad that someone did it. Even though my mom is still somewhat supportive, it's kind of just like, make sure you're safe, but like, you know, don't come here with no baby. But like even now, like my same aunt has a younger son who's he's 14, 15, and I want to be that person. Like, okay, like he has siblings too, but it's like, yeah, I pick him up from school. Like, okay, like you're in grade 10 now. Are there girls? Like, you know, and he's like, no, I don't focus on girls. I focus on school. And I'm like, okay, you don't lie to me. Like, you know, I'm the cool cousin. Are there girls? Like, and like, I won't tell him too much about me, but I'm like, you know, like in high school, like I was going to parties. There were boys. I was kissing. He was like, you were kissing. I'm like, I was kissing, you know, at this age or whatever. He's like, you know, like I haven't had my first kiss yet. But I'm like, yo, it's going to come in time. Like, you know, don't worry. So I like being that like older. I'm not old. But I like being that like older. Like I want, even though it's like I don't have a kid, but I like him and like being able to talk to him. So whenever I have kids, you know, it's like he's like my prep. So I want to like have this conversation with kids, because like no one really genuinely had that with me. So like I want to be that person, like that outlet, like that trust. Like, okay, Zoe, like, oh, I had sex, or you know, I kissed a girl, like this is this. I'm like, okay, like let's talk about it. Let's, you know, go this together. Not too much, but you know, have the support system.
I always wonder what that is, like the not talking to your kids about it, or like when you're like watching a kissing scene with your parents, or just like covering it up.
Yeah,
like you don't see it.
Or when like your
mom
mom gets
think
tight,
that
she's like, what? It's like sex scene. She's like moving her body,
they're looking around
on the couch.
Like, you like this?
Yeah. She's like, the popcorn's burning. It's like, there's no popcorn.
She's like, you want to watch? I think that they feel like they're planting a seed in your head. Like they're like, if I say it to her, then she's gonna know about it. She's gonna think about it.
Yeah.
No sex exists.
And my mom would like, she would watch the most like outrage. Not like, she would just let us watch like anything. Like she didn't care what it was rated, but it'd be like, it would come to like, close your eyes. And my sister and I'd be like, oh my God. And we put like the blanket over our head. But she'd let us watch it. She'd be like, okay, close your eyes. And it's like, oh my God, Mom. Well, then turn it off. Yeah, we would just sit. Yeah, we would like, if there's a sex scene, she'd be like, close your eyes. And we'd be like, okay. And we put the blanket over her head. She'd be like, okay. And then we take it off and the sex scene was done. That was my childhood.
To be fair, there's like few things like more uncomfortable than watching a sex scene with your parents.
God. Yeah.
That's
excruciating.
Now I feel like I'm pregnant. I'm like, Mom, what are you watching? Ew. And I'm like, literally, I'm walking around, I hear like panting. I'm like, what is this on the TV? Yeah, I'm like, what is this on the TV on volume 40? What are you watching? And I'm like, ew, Mom. She's like, it's just Game of Thrones or whatever the hell she be watching, House and Dragon. They be like doing wild shit in Game of Thrones. Incest and dotting and bopping and dragons and, oh, no.
I like it.
I'm
curious about you, Lu, though. Like, did your parents have the talk with you?
My mother still thinks I'm a virgin.
Still thinks is she gonna watch this?
No, she's not gonna watch this.
Okay, because I'm like, don't make
and she
this.
will continue to think that I'm a virgin.
Yeah, I watched that.
No, my parents never had a sex talk with me, and like there was 2 of them in the house, so they had no excuse. Yeah, I learned about sex from school and HBO, I guess.
HBO. And even in school, it was like, I feel like the kids broke it to you before you actually learned, because there's always that one kid in class who had like an older sibling who would like tell them as a joke, and then they come to class and be like, did you know the penis goes in the vagina? And you're like, what? That's how I learned about sex in like grade 5 or grade 4. This girl was like, did you know that the boy puts his penis in your vagina? And I was like, no, they don't. They just roll around. What are you talking about? I genuinely thought that sex was just, because in like the movies they do like, they hug and they roll around the bed and it's kind of over. I'm like, no, they just like hug and like roll around. She's like, no, the penis goes inside. And I'm like, I've never seen that, so you're lying. And then you get to grade 6 and you're like, oh, so it actually goes inside. And then you're looking at yourself, you're like, but where does it go? Because like you don't really know as a kid like all the holes, and you're like, so where is it? And then you get to like 18, you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I thought it was a long hug.
A long hug?
Yeah, like a special hug between parents.
It's a really weird hug.
Yeah, I mean, we were kids, right? So it's just like a
You know what?
special
I will
hug.
say, when I was like in high school, when I was like 14, there were kids who were like sexually active at an extremely young age.
Yeah.
And so that's really how I found out, like learned about sex, was like socially.
Yeah.
You know what's so interesting though? In doing research for the show, I always thought that we were the anomaly, like the people I was writing about were like we were the weird ones to society. But at the time in 2017, a study came out that showed that millennials are the most sexist generation in 60 years, meaning
We're the most sexist?
sexless.
Oh, sexless, sorry.
We do not be getting it.
Yeah. And that on average, millennials started having sex at the age of 25 in the US and 26 in the UK. Yeah. And so I think that there's definitely a perception that, the younger generation, this swipe right generation, is extremely hypersexualized. But I just think that those who aren't having sex are super quiet about it.
Yeah, that's true.
I love that. The
Think
unison.
about it. It's like what floor, like in a room full, like where are they gonna have the floor? I get it. I get what you're
But
saying.
also, why would they when virginity has always been shamed and it's always...
And if it's like a room full of people talking about their sexual exploits, why would you chime in to be like, I have not had sex. I have nothing to add to this conversation. Like,
true.
And I feel like it's interesting with that same topic where it's like, for women are shamed when they have sex early. So it's like some people will lie and be like, oh, I haven't had sex when they do. But then for guys, it's the opposite, where guys who have never had sex will be like, yeah, I had sex when they hadn't. So it's like the same type of parallel, just on a different
She's
side.
from a different school. You didn't know her. You know the guy that lied about it?
I was never a
Remember when I went to New York for that wedding?
You won't know about it.
I was never a liar, but I definitely knew people that were lying.
You never lied.
On my life, I was never embarrassed of being a virgin. Like that was just never that was never something with me. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely know some people that were lying. But one more question I had about the show is like, I just really loved how all of the characters were cool. Like none of the characters were corny or weird.
Ash was corny.
I just feel like all the characters, I feel like with the writing, and also I think it's like a Toronto thing where people from Toronto are just inherently just have a certain demeanor
Je ne
about
sais
themselves.
quoi.
Well, some of them, have a certain je ne sais quoi about themselves, and I think you guys showed it really well in the show. It's like a balance of you guys being yourself plus also being the character. Was that intentional, or were you guys just naturally like that?
I was acting in it. I think that everything that you do is like a different. It's like, what would Abby be if Abby was me? Like if I was Abby, it's like I'm bringing my essence into Abby. So it's like that's how I think acting is just it's a human experience. It's like you can maybe like the way that Abby gets through her day is a little bit different, but the emotions and the things that she's thinking and her intentions are all like human things. So it's like you just stretch yourself. You know, you find those like pieces within yourself, because I think that I never say never anymore in my life, because I've said never.
And
throughout
then
my
watch
life,
you.
and I've done. So I've done. So it's like, yeah, it's just like a human experience. So I feel like I just try to be as open as I possibly can, not judge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you think that all the characters are cool, particularly the main four. I'm very proud of that, so thank you.
Yeah.
That was intentional. We wanted as much as possible. Like, I didn't want anyone to feel like a caricature. I didn't like. This community has not been represented on screen, and.
Sorry. Let's just ask. We need a Kleenex on set.
Kleenex for the
on set.
Kleenex on set, please.
How are we doing for time? Also, I know she said she had to.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we can wrap up after this. Yeah.
So sorry.
You don't got no clue.
Hey, so we got a guy for that now.
We got a guy. We got a Kleenex guy.
Is there tissue?
Does no one
is there
have
tissue back there, Rhodas?
Thank you so much. I am so sorry. No. I was trying
She's trying to be very quiet.
She was trying to be so, but I'm also like, we're on camera, so I can see her like in the background, like.
you know we're on camera.
We're on camera and Aiden's talking.
Like, yo, you
I
got
know,
a
and you
booger.
were like, no.
gotten up. Should I have just gotten up and gone? Everyone would think a shit.
I know, and you were looking at you were like, what? No.
Hey, you got a booger, my boy.
It would have been a lose-lose. Either way, it never would have. So
No, we'll get Kleenex on set.
no, don't be sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I really am.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Okay.
But yeah, while we wait for the Kleenex.
Yeah.
Maybe you should start your answer again, Aden.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I love that you said that all the characters felt really cool, and that was. Oh wait.
Yeah. Quiet on set, just the Kleenex. Goddamn.
This is a casual podcast.
It is. It's very. Yeah. This is
It's
very
very
authentic.
casual. It's
We're
okay.
yeah.
You're good. You can,
We're just thinking about
Audio, sound,
Oh no, don't worry.
quiet on set.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't have
good.
to. No, you can cut it off if you want to.
No quiet on the set. Okay. I guess.
She's like, I don't care.
Yes, you know.
I just need a Kleenex.
vibes.
Pocket, save it for later. Okay, thanks. Go.
Okay, there we go.
Thanks, everyone.
And okay.
So I love that you said that you loved all the characters and that they felt really cool. And the reason why that's really important to me in particular is because the four girls, they're not just like four black girls. They are four black women, but they're four black women who happen to be of Ethiopian, Eritrean, Somali, and Sudanese descent. And we've never seen these characters before. At best, we've seen them dancing in a music video, but we've never been able to actually hear their thoughts, see their actions, get a sense for their identity. And I really wanted to do them justice. If we're going to see them for the first time and hear from them for the first time, I felt like we just had to, one, make them really full, well-rounded characters, but two, just like really, really cool, because there was a show actually that did have representation, Somali representation, but it got a lot of flack because it was very negative, and they were portrayed as criminals, and the whole show was like them as criminals. So it didn't, the show didn't continue. And I just think we have a responsibility, and I'm really proud to be able to carry that I want to showcase us in the coolest, best, and also authentic light. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you did that.
Thank you.
I think you did that. I'm excited to go home and watch episode 10 now, because I'm like, I'm not gonna ruin it. But yeah, I think you did that, and I think even like the episode names being like Drake songs, I caught it right away. Actually, I'd lie, I didn't catch it right away because I was watching on my laptop, and I'm like, okay, I'm like Signs.
Yeah,
And
which
I'm
one
like,
was it for you that made you? Oh.
I think it was Signs.
For me, it was Dreams.
Oh no, Dreams Money Can Buy, because that was episode 2, I think, right? Yeah, but I think I didn't really catch it. I'm like, okay, that's a Drake song. But I'm like, maybe this fits the episode. Then I saw like Signs, and I was like, okay, that's like God's plan. And I was like, okay, no, this is not a coincidence. And I like looked, and I was like, got it. Okay, yeah, that was really good. Also, like, you didn't notice?
I didn't know that until you said it just now. I never noticed.
So what did you just think?
All
You
the
just thought,
episodes
it's
are
an
named
Easter
after
egg.
Drake
Now,
songs.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're watching on the what's it called, the Fire Stick, you don't see the titles
Yeah.
unless you're scrolling through the episodes. So
Yeah, I know that makes sense.
That's my
Yeah, I did catch it a bit later, but I was like, oh, that's a good head nod to Toronto too. But yeah, I think it's a really good show, and I really hope I encourage everyone to like take the time and watch it and connect, especially a person of color or wherever you're from, immigrant household. I think you should watch it, and like I said, learn and also connect. And I think that's a perfect balance, at least my experience watching the show. So kudos to you, all three of you, for like being a part of this, and I hope we get a season 2 or whatever's in your future, or a male version if Chisora
Inshallah.
really wants to fund it. No I'm kidding. But yeah, I wish you guys all the success, and
Thank
I'm
you
glad
so
that you
much.
guys
Thank you for
changed and we
having
can
us.
put you on this platform.
Thank you. Thank
you.
you so
This
much
is
for having us.
Absolutely.
This is our first interview.
Really? Woo! In the new
Virgins.
space. Virgins. Nice.
So yes, thank you for being our first.
Amazing. Thank you for being our first.
Thank
in
you for
this
being
space.
gentle.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys christened our new space. This is gonna be the space, by the way. I'm gonna talk about it later, but
no more.
I know we
Real
said the
nice
crowd
in
can
here.
Popping
vote,
cherries.
but we're not voting anymore.
You
This,
talked about it.
yeah, I'll talk about it. But yeah, thank you so much for coming, though.
Thank you for having
Awesome,
us.
guys.
You guys are absolutely lovely.
You guys are the best.
Thank you so much
Of
for
course.
having us.
Okay.
Reversal Man.